Jim Butcher. Jim Butcher made an excellent book series. He was challenged in a writer's forum. Someone told him, "I bet you," he's like, "Yeah, you can write a story about anything. Just throw a couple things out there." And someone says, "Fine. I bet you can't write a story based on Pokemon and the Lost Roman Legion." So a fictional work and a part of history. And Jim Butcher said, "Fine. I will write a story about Pokemon and the Lost Roman Legion." And 6 books into a complete story later, we have the Codex Alera, which is a really, really good fantasy series. And it was because, someone maybe, hopefully it was in jest or it was positive, but it could have been a detractor saying, "Fine, I bet you can't do this." And he did, and he made a good book series out of it. And so I bet he made bank off this person who's like, "Yeah, you can't do it." I think it's a Codex Alera, Alera is I believe how it's spelled. There are you can imagine in a six book series, which is on Audible also, and I can recommend it on there because that's how I put that book series away. So you can listen to it on Audible. Obviously, there are story spoilers spread throughout, so if you're gonna do research into it, be careful. But if you want a recommendation, then there you go. Ah, yes, Selter's quote. Exactly, Derek. I love it. Yep. Audible is Audible is I have a physical library. If I showed you all my physical library, I might make a jaw drop. It's another step, Bubonic, but you know what? It's one step closer. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. Yep, Dresden is a tabletop RPG. Yeah, Jade. Yes, Jade's theme. Those are very good examples, everyone. And Derek, thank you for sharing those. All right. Not that I'm going to ignore chat, but I want to, speaking of planting the seeds and just writing and letting it go here. I do want to bring up here. I'll reopen this. I might have to close it down after a while because again, Windows can get really persnickety about such things being open for a while. As you recall, this is the map that we made. This is the map that we made in MS Paint. We spoke, we chatted. Took maybe a half hour if we really thought about it. And now what I want to do as DMs, right? I want to unleash our creativity. Hey, Neo Realms, welcome. I want to look at what we have and I want to populate it. Now, as a DM or even as a player, one of the first things that we're drawn to is, does it have dwarves or does it have drow or does it, you have Underdark stuff. I bet there's Duragar. And we're drawn to sentient races because that's what we are. And especially if they're weird, right? They're not humans. Or they're not even standard fantasy, elves, dwarves, halflings kind of a thing. And we'll get to it. We'll talk sentient races. However, I want to populate... Ooh, my. Jeez, apparently I'm going through puberty again here with this kind of quasi-sore throat thing going on. Although, I'll tell you, if I start sounding like a seagull, phew. Because I didn't get to share the story yet about that. I will. But if I start sounding like a seagull, then you know that the disease is taken and I failed that con save. You've played that golf course? Oh, well then, Neo Realms, you can, maybe you can give us some advice on the various hazards. Where does the windmill go? I was a little scratchy-throated before that, Sheeps. You gotta remember, last night I was also doing a ton of voices. And I've just had this kind of drip. I don't know if it was necessarily the seagull. You know, I don't think voices is really a, you know, I enjoy doing them. I can't say that it's a hobby of mine. Mine. Oh, it started. Run! Ah! All right, so here's our settlement document. We have our... Oh, crowdfunded, you're continuing the gift from Diadems? Oh, dude, that's awesome. Thank you. So what I want to do is let's talk about what lives here, right? In an ecosystem, you know, so here we have Arctic and Underdark. We have some basic setting notes, you know, maybe some of the weather patterns or forces of nature or supernatural. But what's our ecosystem? We have producers and we have consumers, right? Think about this in food chain. Think about this in a food chain. Think about this if you want to really break it down. The Circle of Life song from Lion King. Producers are often, you know, like they're grasses and you know, plants that are, pardon me, they're giving back, right? They're adding nutrients, or they're making oxygen, or they're holding, you know, the earth, the terrain together, kind of a thing. Consumers are everything else. There's not a lot of producers, but there's a many. I mean, producers are proliferate. Proliferate? They have proliferated everywhere. But there's a bigger variety of consumers, right? The grasshopper eats the blade of grass. A mouse eats a grasshopper. A cat eats the mouse. A hawk eats the cat. You know, it swoops down and takes the cat. And then something else eats the hawk. And we can keep going up that way, but eventually, whatever the alpha predator or whatever it is, you know, it'll come to an end, and then it will die, and it will decompose. That's stuck in your head now? Well, you're welcome, crowdfunded. Just don't let Disney know, because they might charge you a nickel for playing it in your head. Your thoughts will receive a copyright strike. They have the ultimate consumer, a town-wandering gelatinous cube. It just kind of wanders around, and the people feed it like a stray dog. That's a cool idea, Derek. Keeps oozing onto Old Man Benson's porch every 2 days to take out those scraps he leaves. They're gonna delete beleated. Oh, I better be careful about doing those gravelly voices. Whew, it's a little tender. So let's think about this, right? Let's set up some basic food chains. Let's set up. Hey, V Bunny. Let's set up some food chains. Let's set up some cycles. We're not talking about sentient races. We can add those, and then the sentient races are going to be a part of it as well. But the sentient races can be made from everything else that exists: the terrain and the mamminals and the plants. So our first area we're going to discuss is this Arctic Underdark. right? It's a big old glacier. It goes even further up off the map, and it just has these howling tunnels of wind that rush through it. And in so doing, it's carved out this system of tunnels and caverns that are shifting and moving and crumbling and opening and slushing and all this other stuff. So we used Underdark as an inspiration. So it's not necessarily, we're not going to make Mesoberenzen. Oh, geez, some of these drow names. It may not be a traditional Underdark, but we're taking that concept and we're going to place it inside a glacier that moves and crushes and grinds and does all of this. Because at least in the Underdark, unless you do something, there's probably a good chance the cave isn't going to collapse in on you because they're established. And so, yeah, you're under the earth, but it's terra firma for the most part. Doesn't mean something can't happen. And so we fill this with things here. So let's talk about some producers, right? Ooh, pardon me. What vegetation might grow in this area where the wind howls? And by the way, it's a wild magic area. Pardon. And the thought is any spells that might have a verbal component, or maybe because the way the wind howls, maybe it forms words. And so wild magic actually just happens. You don't even need to cast magic because it's kind of like, 1,000 monkeys in a room with typewriters. You're eventually going to get a spell out of them. And so wild magic can happen here. And there's also these faces. Are they humanoid? I don't know. Maybe they are. But faces, kind of like the face on Mars, are appear to be etched onto the ice or maybe even below it. It could be illusion. It could be that there are faces there. It could be people. Who knows? There's faces big and small. And they could appear natural like with the old man granite in New Hampshire. Old Man in the Mountain. Or it could be manufactured by civilization, past or present, that is carving them in their likeness, like a Mount Rushmore. Why not palm trees? We can adapt that. That's fine. So, if we want, let's get some vegetation here, right? So we are talking that there is sludge, there is things are cold, but there's plenty of water, and lots of nutrients are dug up in the glacial movement. So there are minerals, there is dirt, that exists. In fact, really, if this is, if we're being honest with ourselves here, we would probably even put kind of like a little frontage of this same soil, like this gouge out soil, right in front of the glacier. And this would probably be more like an alluvial fan that comes down, because the glacier's kind of pushing this roll of dirt and rock in front of it. Now, I saw something called ice caps. If that is that like a mushroom that grows in, is this a D&D monster? We can create our own stuff. We want an Arctic style palm tree. We can make one. This is our world, right? We're the DMs. In our real world, vegetation can exist. Mosses and lichens grow in cold environments. Various trees can grow. It just depends on maybe the light availability. And you know what? Some plants can grow without a lot of light. And it's amazing to see how a plant looks if it still receives water and nutrients, but it doesn't properly photosynthesize. Could there be a spell that gives a race a special earth to grow with? I'm not sure I follow what your thought is, crowdfunded. Well, we can make things like Arctic foxes. I want to make what are our producers? what's the vegetation, right? An Arctic fox can't live there unless it's feeding off of something, and it's either going to feed on lesser creatures or it's going to feed on the vegetation. I want to come up with an ecosystem. Are there grasses that exist? Maybe there's maybe we make something called oh yeah, you could have a fluorescent mold. Here, let's come up with I don't know, dangleweed. I'm just using this as a I mean, we could employ this, but we can use this as an example. A wispy grass that often clings to the interior of the windy tunnels. And blows in the winds. It extracts nutrients and moisture from the glacier and uses the wind to spread its seed spores, or I guess we just say seeds, until they roll or blow into a crack in the ice and begin the process anew. Yay. Plans to feed off the mana of the wild magic instead of life. Hell, yeah, we could tap into that. So yeah, a glow moss or some sort of a phosphorescent or a fluorescent mold. Sure. So let's put let's put oh, this will be cool. The Mage Staff Ferns, or the Mage Staff Fern. This fern is usually curled in a spiral akin to the knot at the top of a staff. When magical winds begin to kick up, the frond, this is based off the fiddlehead fern. If you want to look up what a fiddlehead fern looks like, then you could do it at home. When magical winds begin to kick up, the frond uncurls and opens wider and flatter in order to absorb the magical essence carried on the winds. The magic collected often produces interesting light effects or sometimes mutations to the plant. If in a dense enough area with these ferns, the effects of wild magic, I guess of the wind-based, more specifically. Well, I don't know if it absorbs magic. If in a dense enough area with these ferns, the effects of wild magic, oh yeah, maybe we can tear it up, will be suppressed if an area is overgrown. It becomes more like an anti-magic field. How about that? So it's called a mage staff, right? It looks like a gnarled top to a thing, and then it opens up and catches magic, and it kind of curls back up, and it's digesting the magic. And so it could be beautiful. It could just be, it could be its own thing. It could be beneficial, or it could be harmful, depending on how you use it. There's this black dirt in the Amazon that's left over from the Mayans or Aztecs. Can't remember. Anyway, they made it, and nobody knows how. It's the only way crops can grow in the rainforest, and it's highly sought after. If you add it to other soil that wouldn't grow anything, that soil will now grow things. That is very interesting, crowdfunded. I was not aware of that. The Amazon River strips a lot of minerals from the area. If the trees weren't growing in the thin layer of dirt still, then the area would be closer to grasslands. Yes, bubonic. That's why we see, it's a rainforest. It's abundant with life, and there's trees and everything. It's very tenuous. The jungle floor is not, necessarily super rich in all the vitamins and minerals that a growing jungle needs. V-Bunny says, sphere flowers. Doesn't maintain its beautiful yellow coloring in warm temperatures. It will come back in the winter strong as ever if properly cared for, even in its off season. So we have kind of a predominant. We have a predominant grass. We have this this kind of a supernatural, quasi-supernatural fern. V Bunny wants to put in a sphere flower. The color of the flower can change with the temperature. Sometimes aiding those who are following others or prey through the tunnels as the flowers reacted to warm bodies. The flowers and plants themselves are edible and somewhat chewy. Interestingly enough, depending on the color of the flower when you pick it, the plant will taste differently. Most seem to prefer yellow.
Orphans previously discussed and pull a box, my dude.
Dude, plunder loot? Oh my goodness. Yeah, plunder loot, you definitely have a pull list of orphans from the orphanage. It's a pretty good list too, plunder. And what box were you looking at? I did get in Dungeon of the Mad Mage. Why cut and burn farming doesn't work there? The trees are the only thing keeping the ecosystem stable. Yes, and I think that's been an outreach to the natives there for a while, or to the people who live there, if not the natives. And by the way, sometimes little things like this, what does that mean? What does yellow taste like? I don't know. It seems to be the preferred flavor. To who? I don't know. Lizard folk? What about to a human? Tastes like walnuts? But just throw that out there, right? It's giving you stuff to think about. In my world, a super rare potion ingredient because the terrain was so treacherous and it bloomed so little. Oh, frost lilies. Okay. Maybe yellow is lucky to some races, yeah. I do have... So remember Plunder Loot? Storm King's Thunder and Monster Menagerie 3 are the 1322 because they're the big boy boxes. Mad Mage, Ravnica, Tomb of Annihilation are 1118 because they're the normal boxes. Mad Mage single selection? Okay. Plunder Loot, do you... Wait, are you playing in D&D time tonight? Or is that already over? Because if you're fine, if you have a little bit of time, Plunder Loot... I got a migraine earlier, had to take my... Oh, you had a migraine and you missed D&D time. Oh, Plunder Loot, man, I'm sorry. I know how... I personally know, but I know that those can be very debilitating. But Plunder Loot, if you have a little bit of time, can I pull your box when we finish up with our exercise? If you have to go, I want to do it for you, especially because you are stepping up and adopting a lot of minis tonight. Give all the minis love. I got all my chain devils in hand. Oh, yeah, Technotron. Technotron got a lot of the Cackler demons out of Ravnica, and he has quite the brood going. You'll play next week? All right. I shall rule the D&D world. Well, Nem, hey, play with D&D time. I don't know if you have yet, but you should give them a go. Yes, sir. All right. So we'll crack open that box for you here in a little bit, Plunder Loot. I saw another thing here. So there's frost lilies. Cheese mold that just grows on the walls, which is an edible mold. Many insects and herbivores prefer this mold. So yeah, we can put in. Maybe we can put in one more thing. A note. There is a. Maybe we can call them a frost lily. This large flower. This large flower has an exotic beauty because it requires freezing temperatures to grow properly. Otherwise, without the support of its... I mean, we're talking IRL terms, right? We're all DMs here. We're making a world of its special cells filled with water that must freeze to support it. It looks wilted and weak. When frozen, a special antifreeze, like a sap or whatever, like a, I don't want to say nectar, forms at the new growths to allow for it. It is often found covered in frost and glimmers reflecting the light off its white petals in a prismatic pattern. And then, you know, like, so V-Bunny's putting something that's like, you know, it's a food. And we can put that here. Various molds and lichens live inside the glacier as well, which can host a bevy of deadly or beneficial properties, such as in making cheeses, poisoning your enemies, or just looking pretty. Things like lichens can also be used to carve messages into a stone or slab of ice. Well, so crowdfunded, I mean, glacier movement and all that churning does produce its own special dirt. Take a look at the dirt and nutrients here in northern Ohio, and compare the contents to the dirt of Florida or Louisiana or other places like that. And you'll find that all of the churning of the minerals and all of the seasons causing decomposition and all the water and everything mixing around has created for some very fertile land up here. Wolf Slime, hello to you. Welcome, welcome. I'm sorry if I missed any messages of yours earlier here while I was talking. But welcome to you. Yeah, Florida dirt is not the same as Ohio dirt. All right, so we have a basic form for this ecosystem, right? We have producers. We have this grass that's prodigious. You know, if we want to throw in even some trees of some variety, I mean, why couldn't trees live in a magical glacier that's carved with, you know, carved with wind, even like magical wind from somewhere? You know, every tree doesn't have to be 100-foot tall ancient oak. Yeah, the soil down there is a different chemistry. So we have some consumers. Now you're saying that some mephits could exist, and I'm fine throwing in some elemental stuff. As for a wind mephit, I don't know if there's a wind mephit per se. There's an ice mephit. I don't know. It could be in. I don't know if there's an expansion in Volos or Mordenkainen's or something like that. But we can think of that, right? In fact, if we really wanted to, this is a technique you can use as a dungeon master. If you pop over to our player's handbook here, take a look at Ranger. And Ranger is going, I mean, you could also look in the monster manual. That's fine as well. This is a good shortcut, especially if you want your players to interact with the world. And the reason I say this is not only can we look at Rangers for the terrains that generally exist, druids as well. If you look at here we go, a favored enemy. And so you can make a checklist. Aberrations. Why is this centered? Shouldn't be centered. Beasts. Celestials. Constructs. Dragons. Elementals. Fae. Fiends. Gigantes. Oops. Monstrosities. Oozes. Plants. Undead. Now let's put all this right aligned. Oh, come on. Are you cereal? Get out of there. There we go. So, as a dungeon master, you can look at your region that you want to populate and realize these are the broad categories of now these are monsters, and not all monsters have to attack. They can be a part of an ecosystem, and we'll get to that. Though these are very good prompts to think about, all right? In our glacier, in our sort of windy tunnel, kind of supernatural something, do aberrations exist? You know, gibbering mouthers, beholders. Geez, what are some other aberrations? I think blink dogs are. I don't think blink dogs are aberrations. But you can think about it and say, you know what? In this region, I don't have native aberrations. I do have native beasts. Actually, let's do this. Do any celestials live here? Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. What about constructs? Maybe they do, maybe they don't. I mean, we could always, like, flip a coin. Dragons? I don't know. Elementals? It's, V-Bunny wants some mephits. Maybe elementals kind of whip up out of the fact that we have this magically saturated area. Fae? I mean, there is a winter court, but you don't have to have Fae just because they're available. Now I'm picturing this tree that grows like crabgrass, pushing back and forth into the ice to further anchor itself by its trunk in the ice. Oh! So wolf slime, yeah, so it's a tree that is like breaking up and wiggling into and in between, treating the ice as like a soil. That could be a good idea. Blink dogs are Fae. That could be, yeah. The oldest tree is a twig-looking thing on a cliff and a little water. Pinus, it's like longevity, so it's a long-lived pine. I can't help but think of Mr. Miyagi's little pine bonsai. Yeah, I mean, we could make wind mephits, V-Bunny. Yeah, the faces could be constructs. Hey, orcs, welcome. I'm magically saturated, moist with magic. Hey, Nictorek, also. Hello, hello. So anyway, we can go through this list, and we could... I'm just randomly putting X's and O's here. We don't have to have this. Now, and remember, though, some of these... Well, a good chunk of them are sentient races. And right now, I don't know if we're concerned with sentient races. Let's make our ecosystem first. What will exist even if sentient races aren't around? Monstrosities? Oh, maybe there's some things that prowl the tunnels. Oozes? Sure. Plant creatures? Nah. Maybe the plants here are a hazard, right? Like the mage staff fern. or so there's plants, but things that are plant monsters, like a man-trap plant from Tomb of Annihilation and the Peninsula of Chult. Maybe there's nothing like that here. Undead? Maybe? What if the faces are spirits that are trapped in the ice? And what if this glacier is... I'm throwing a lot of what ifs. Talk about it. Think about it. What if the glacier grows because it is actually collecting spirits of people? It's a destination. And so the more souls that the ice holds, the larger the glacier gets. And so the faces in the ice are the faces of people who've died. And so are they benevolent undead? Or are they harmful undead? Maybe. On both counts. And maybe this can explain the howling wind, the random magical effects, as this entire glacier is haunted because there's something at the core of this glacier, or there's something about this glacier that is holding on to people. What if that has to do with the nomads that we were talking about, right? The nomads that came through here? We're calling them like mist people or will-o-wisp people. What if, and they continue on in a different form because of the effects of the fallen star? What if when these people die, and maybe there was a civilization that existed here that was wiped out during the meteor strike, and that could have caused, maybe at the core of this glacier, there's a frozen city, an old frozen city of the natives who lived here. And something happened. And the meteor strike threw a bunch of debris up in the air. And it got really cold because the sun was blocked out. And due to the magical interference, the radiation, whatever, from the meteor strike, the city became more of a place of the dead. And so ice formed because it's very cold. It was naturally cold, and then it fused over into supernatural. And so this other society at some point in time moved in that wanted to follow this, that wanted to follow the star. Ended up, half of them got lost in the mire. The other half continued on through the forest, following the tracks here. And while they've changed, they're no longer what they used to be, because now they're these kind of misty will-o-wisp people. Maybe when they die as well, they are drawn into the glacier. And so the glacier grows as the death toll does. And that could make, then, the prophecy of doom that we were talking about for this region, because the swamp people had a prophecy of doom. What if that is, the doom is something's going to happen and the glacier is going to push all the way out and kill everything and then continue to grow until the entire world is nothing but this frozen, dead, whatever, existence. Doesn't mean they can't venerate the glacier, or maybe they travel through the tunnels and hoping to commune with a lost loved one, in hopes of looking into the glassy ice caves and seeing a face of someone that they knew and loved. Derek, you're not sure if you should be in bed. Why is that? Are you feeling okay? It's a good idea. Get your base right first before taking to the top. What if quicksand worked with the Venus flytraps? Is that Tremors? Oh, I love Tremors. I like that. They even turned it into a TV show, which is interesting. Frost zombies? Yes, many there are plant creatures that could be possible in this region. Give me some time to finish my write-up. That's fine. If any of you want to continue to contribute, because I don't have like 12 hours to be here, but I want to throw out ideas, and if you want to have some, that's perfectly fine too. Ancient wars long forgotten, spirit soul they don't remember. Spooky. So like a glacier, the glacier eats souls. The glacier is a monstrosity, and so this whole time the glacier, the glacier is Maybe like a living or an unliving thing. What if the wind that blows through is almost like a breathing or something? So the people in the ice bog bodies that are preserved, or just ice versions of themselves. The people in the ice would be the spirit. Well, I mean, there's probably physical people in the city that succumbed during the meteor strike and was frozen over and are preserved. So V-Bunny said ice zombies? There could be. Or bodies or skeletons that are frozen in the ice. And in fact, they could even be pushed out of the glacier. You know, you might find some bones and other stuff scattered at the edge here. When water freezes, it pushes. When water freezes, it pushes, or it can, depending on how it freezes, debris out of it. Right? The water's freezing, and as it freezes, it pushes salt and other things. That's why you have freshwater icebergs floating around in the sea. I mean, there could be some salt depending on the temperature. Salt water freezes at a different point. But solid materials are often pushed through this melt-freeze process so that you just have pure water that's freezing in the cycle over and over again. And so the glacier, over time, can push out boulders and skeletons and maybe clues about this abandoned city and all that. And by the way, we're talking science, we're talking geology. Did y'all realize you're taking a Geology 101 course? Whatever, like a Science 101 thermodynamics? Oh, that's more for expansion and contraction. Formed because the winter brought by the ash of the comet. What if the doom is the end of the glacier? Oh, you know what? If in fact crowdfunded, what if it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't? The more people die, the more the glacier will expand, and it'll eventually push you out into the sea. However, if the glacier melts, will that release all those spirits? What if all the spirits aren't nice? What if all the corpses or the skeletons that they find pushed through the glacier? What if those aren't nice? And if this glacier melts, it could unleash a city, you know, an old city of a million, or well, maybe whatever you want, 500,000, 1 million people suddenly unfreeze and are now, they're confused, probably angry, scared, bitter. If we want to talk about undead, you know, properties, you know, some ghosts might take on the feelings, like they can only feel the last thing that they felt. So you have vengeful ghosts and benevolent ghosts and all that. There's a lot of potential with that idea. With enough souls, the glacier becomes sentient? Ooh. What if the glacier is just a giant ooze? A sleeping lich stuck inside the ice? Y'all are having good ideas. Alien spore. Yeah, alien spores got to come down to affect the flora and fauna. Could someone sacrifice themselves to the glacier to release a greater evil in that case? Maybe. Some people maybe want to try and dig through it, follow the tunnels. But the tunnels are always twisting and crushing and being made anew through erosion. So maybe people explore it at their own peril. This is the Underdark, quote unquote. But no one's found the juicy center of the glacier yet. Things tend to disorder. The second law of thermodynamics. Yes, entropy. Exactly, crowdfunded. Some good cherry limeade. Crowdfunded? Yeah, we could do something along those lines. So look at everything that we've conceptualized. Everything that we this is not purple orcs. Come on now. I have purple drank, but tonight is cherry limeade. Unknown until our heroes stumble upon them. A modified 5e monster that you won't have to do much work to create. So yeah, look, just are you all getting this energy, this feeling? Look at the creativity that's being unleashed by a simple MS Paint. Let's click, Phil. And now we're thinking about building an ecosystem that's turned into a history and has turned into... We are creating so much lore for this setting. It is amazing. So yeah, maybe there's not aberrations, but we do have beasts of some kind. We have elementals. We do have a couple monstrosities and oozes. No plant monsters, but we do have undead. And now we're going through, and we can make these extra notes. So we do have that. So spirits in the ice, seen in the reflections. Occasionally, corporeal undead have been known to roam the halls before either being absorbed back into the ice. I mean, if the ice is sentient, it could even push things out as a... you could even push out people to where they're needed for defense or whatever. Occasionally, corporeal undead have been known to roam the halls before either being absorbed back into the ice or pushed out completely. This is causing the faces in the ice. And is a clue to something greater, living or unliving, or otherwise preserved, right? In the glacier. Oozes. If you want to use something traditional, go to the monster manual. You know, does metal exist here? Gray oozes might actually patrol the tunnels to eat all of the metal that's been scraped up by the glacier. It's very yummy and nutritious, right? They're very acidic. And so you can even put that. So we have gray oozes are known to travel in clusters, scouring the tunnels for metal to absorb. They also inadvertently smooth the tunnels and aid in the erosion and reformation. So our gray oozes are earthworms in the ice. They eat the nutrients in the soil. They leave castings. I mean, what does slime poop look like? I don't know. You tell me. What does slime poop look like? If anything. Or do oozes, I don't know, like split off through mitosis? And then they're alive for like a month. They eat and then they die and kind of like split off again or leave some remains or something. They also inadvertently smooth the tunnels and aid in the erosion and reformation of them. A bone ooze? Pardon. Can you get into more details? Orcs, loves, lore. But are there orcs? We'll have to find out. Wolf Slime, well, this was fun. I'm going to sleep. Hey, Wolf Slime, thanks for stopping by. I hope you enjoyed our workshop, and I really hope to see you back here for more workshop. And on Tuesdays, we roleplay as well. But you're welcome to join us on Discord if you haven't already, and hang out whenever. We're all sitting around a table at a game store. We're talking shop. We're talking D&D. We're spitballing ideas. We're having some cherry limeade, and we're having fun. Gracie, you missed something. We're talking about the wildlife that can exist here. Secret of the Silver Blades. Yep, we don't have any sentient races yet. We just have some very primitive life forms, very basic life forms. We'll add something sentient in a little bit. Oh, there goes my headphones. I'm gonna have to plug in. Wolf Slime, thank you very much for that follow. Monstrosities. What, what would live in this kind of a thing? Do we want to use Monster Manual something and step sideways with it? Do we want to take a bullet or a belay, depending on how you want to pronounce it, and instead of making them dirt diggers, we make them ice tunnelers? Do we want to take a Remoraz? Remoraz could be interesting here if you want to go again with Whoop, this is not the Monster Manual. Remorazes are monstrosities that do, they generate heat and they can bore through the ice. So something like that. Or we can create our own. We can create our own monstrosity. Take something that we know, make it bigger, and give it a couple extra things to do. If you also want a really good reference for making your own custom monsters, check out the Krasis monster in the Guildmaster's Guide to Ravnica, because that provides a lot of really cool mutations that you can give to a core set of monster stats, and then you can either randomly roll or sort of provide these extra effects to the Krasis to customize them on the fly. My suggestion is have it explode on death. So with this would be something then that. So because we're talking thermodynamics, this monstrosity found a way to generate heat and cold, and you're talking about the Krasis. Oh, gotcha. You ran one in your campaign. How did the players like that? But you know what? Let's take this and run with it. So our Remorazes, ours are, as the book says. However, when it dies, it loses control of its heat, and inside the glacier, that can cause something to quickly heat up, or something to or even cool down. And so a Remoraz that dies might almost, if not explode in fire, then cause a heat wave that could melt a cavern and just bring water down on top of people. And now people are covered in cold water. It doesn't mean that it's boiling water. It just has to be not frozen water. And then the glacier, with the howling cold winds, comes in and freezes people. So maybe it wouldn't be something that would be uncommon if we have travelers looking to try and find the Lost City, for example, where they would find, it's an odd pattern. They find a dead, millipede and a group of 4 to 6 adventurers who all seem to be frozen in ice that is separate from the cavern walls. Now, you don't tell your players this, because if your players are like, ah, it's a monster, let's kill it. Or if you have a player who's like, so that's a Remorez. And a Remorez has 195 hit points and has immunity to cold and fire damage. Well, suddenly, Mr. Actually, you may have an idea of some of the things, and that's fine. We're going to keep it there, enough to fool you. But how our Remorez's act is going to be different. They were very salty, says Derek. Bubonic, you made a nasty undead to scare some adventurers. Use a deep goose. Maybe there are some eggs that are buried in the ice. Elementals. The elementals, V-Buddy was saying mephits. And we can keep it simple. Not everything has to be, titanic monstrosities to rip a party apart. Mephits can attack people. They're also kind of just a manifestation. So maybe the mephits can sometimes even be confused for the undead. What if the mephits look like a humanoidish form and look like a shambling corpse? But they're elementals because they're made of ice or dirt. So we have an ice elemental or a mud, like an equivalent of a mud mephit. But they look humanoid. So, or if we don't want humans being here, that's fine. Or whatever, it's a centaur land. They look centauroid. They look snake girl-oid. We're suddenly playing D&D Monster Musume. Just be careful, because if you get the monster manual for that, you better be 18 plus. Mephits, but people. What's the most basic common level of monster? Monsters can be scaled up or down, so it can be very difficult to say, oh sheeps. Icy will-o-wisps. Yeah, well, because we're making a sentient race of will-o-wisps that are going to live in another area. It is lewd, Nictorak. There is an encyclopedia of monster girls that is not published by Wizards of the Coast. And as for beasts, many small, maybe nuisance creatures, like Arctic foxes, rodents that feed on the plant life. And sometimes when you do this as well, you can also say, but no birds or flying insects. Rodents of unusual size, they could be ROUS. Yeah, if you wanna rebrand a sturge to make it a nice sturge, that's fine. And you say, well, but there's wind. Well, there are. What would a flying creature do, though? It would be dashed against the ice walls. Birds and flying insects wouldn't survive. They just get destroyed, bouncing off the walls. So crawling insects that can, like, hook into the ice, crawling creatures, they would be more survivable here, right? We got to have a little Darwinian here, a little Darwinism. In fact, on that note, I wonder if This is a O'Sheep's, a good bread and butter monster that I will be showing you here. In fact, I have a ton of these little buggers in the orphanage too. So if anyone wants to adopt them, they're super cute. Flame Skull. I went too far. Fairy Dragon? Oh, you know what? I bet it's in the backpack. In the way back. In the time before. There they are. Hello, giant fire beetles. Giant fire beetles. These can be a lot of fun to throw into things. I mean, they're not necessarily. Look, they deal like an average of 2 damage. They're kind of pests, or they're kind of just a fun little feature, a map feature that, you know, if you hit them, they'll, you know, you can have them blow up if you want. If you want, they can be ice beetles. You know, you could model them after dung beetles, but maybe they... Hey, Carl, welcome back. And thank you. You don't have to call me my lord, but I appreciate the effort. I won't stop you. So maybe instead of rolling dung, if there's not a bunch of poo around, then they roll something else. Or, again, you're creating an ecosystem. So, in this case, what if we have slime beetles? These beetles take the slushy remains of dead oozes and roll them up into nutrient-rich nurseries for their eggs. A small colony of slime beetles will often follow in the slow wake of a cluster of oozes, even trying to protect them as they wait for the slime to die. Or say die naturally. Or it could seem kind of weird, but whatever. A giant fire beetle has an intelligence of 1. They may know that they can't take on the slime, but they got to make sure that the slime otherwise, has to pass naturally for the acidity to bleed out. Or if you want to make the beetles hunt the slimes to then roll up their corpses and plant eggs in them, what if the giant fire beetles try to, almost like a Wile E. Coyote and Roadrunner, except it's a beetle and an ooze. We have 2 one intelligent creatures trying to outsmart each other. And so the fire beetles, or the equivalent here that we're rebranding them, try to melt giant pieces of ice to crush the oozes, or to otherwise kill them or get in their way, because they can't directly assault them, but they know to try and, dupe them. Like effectively a bunch of an Acme level prank. This could be whatever you want. And again, make them interact with each other. So if that's the case, does the Remores eat the oozes? Or because the oozes are acidic, does the Remores eat the mephits because it's immune to ice and fire. And so it'll just chew them up. And so we have a Remoraz that'll eat the Mephits. And what do the Mephits eat, if anything? Do they eat magic? Are the Mephits in cooperation or competition? My goodness. Or are they in competition with the Mage Staff Fern? You know, all these are fun things to think about. And suddenly, we have made an entire ecosystem for this part of our map. You don't have to have 100 monsters. Not everything in the monster manual has to exist here. I mean, look at real life. You know, there's some snakes that could be poisonous. Most of them aren't. I mean, depending on where you live. There may be a bear that lives in your neck of the woods. Most of the time, it'll probably leave you alone unless you're threatening it. You know, there could be coyotes. Lots of coyotes. And other varmints. Will they attack you? Not necessarily, but they're out there. They're eating. They're breeding. They're pooping. They're digging. They're building. They're living and dying. And all of that contributes to what's happening here. I'm doing well, Carl. My voice is a little rough from last night, and also I've just been having some drainage going on here. Hark! I was thinking of small elemental creatures who live like a hive in or above ice that likes to make thin ice floor traps that lead into falling or sliding down deep underground and into tunnels. So then, Hark, take that idea. Look, we're creating weird, fantastic landscapes. It's you know, there's nothing dumb about that. But I want you to develop it. Why do they do this? What does it serve? Are they doing it because these are elementals that that need to extract, you know, nutrients from prey, and so they set a pit trap, kind of like a spider? Are these sort of like, you know, they don't have to have 8 legs, but is this the equivalent of an elemental spider that's laying a trap? And if so, we know that spiders suck the juices out of their victims. What do the elementals get for doing this? Or is this more for... Is it more of a Fey influence, like, yeah, we did it because we're bored and we have a good laugh at it? Where's the city? There are 2 developments or settlements that are going to be in the swamp and the forest. But they're going to be different, in a way. We're also going to put, like, a frontier outpost. Probably, like, right over here. That would be more normal. So we'll make a settlement for that. And then we can also work on the custom race of these mist people, and maybe we can make a custom race here. I'll be back in a few minutes. Gonna make some pasta and garlic bread. All right, that does sound really good, actually. So I'll tell you what, everyone. We did an awesome job coming up with one of our biomes worth of, you know, some monsters, but really we set the groundwork. We made plants, we made animals. We made the trees, we made the squirrels, we blessed them all. Let's take a break. Pardon, my voice is kind of up and down and all around. And when we come back, we can still fill this in together, the different regions. I'm fine with that. But I want to move as an exercise, now that our pumps have been primed. I want to move into doing this race creation for the natives, these mist people, these will-o-wisp people. And then we can also work on the settlement that is existing on the frontier before you get into this strange land. That's kind of, it's like a peninsula or something. It's cut off between a liquid sea and a very solid, sort of like an extra continental shelf that's pinching everything between it here. And then also plunder loot. When we come back, we will pop that box for you as well.